The Sinister Thanksgiving Massacre, Paul Merhige the murderer. Before the wanted posters and that dreadful night, before the restraining orders, the disputes, and the breakdown that started it all, Paul Michael Merhige made a pledge to all 32 of his family members on his graduation page in the high school yearbook. He stated, "I love you now and will forever." But forever didn't last. Paul Merhige, a Florida native, was one of the craziest to do such a thing on a day made for being thankful, celebrations, and happiness by being with your loved ones. Playing music, eating good home-cooked meals and honoring one another, in my opinion, is what Thanksgiving is about. In today's real-life crime story, it goes a little bit further. This Florida man is not a superhero, but rather a villain who admitted and waited years to carry out his crime. At Jim Sitton's home in Jupiter, Florida, on Thanksgiving Day 2009, Paul Michael Merhige, then 35, attended. An accomplishment for most families is that when they gather together, everything goes off without any disagreements or disputes. Paul casually stepped out of the dining room afterward, entered his car, and departed. The remaining 17 members of his family, including his 33-year-old twin sisters, his 76-year-old aunt, and Jim's 6-year-old daughter, stayed to continue the celebration for the remainder of the evening. Later, Paul came back carrying a gun. He started firing at everyone within the house, often at close range. He shot his brother-in-law, Patrick Knight, who had to be put into a medically induced coma for 3 months following the attack, and killed his twin sisters, Carla Merhige and Lisa Knight. Lisa was pregnant at the time. Paul's 52-year-old cousin, Clifford Gabarra, was also shot, although his injuries weren't life-threatening. Paul continued his spree, shooting his Aunt Ramonda Joseph in the shoulder. Her husband bent down next to her to try to stop the heavy bleeding. After moving closer to his aunt and uncle, Paul approached them and shot his aunt once more in the chest, killing her. He then handed the gun to his uncle. Thankfully, after pressing the trigger twice at his uncle, the gun did not go off. Paul entered the room where his cousin-in-law's daughter, Michaela, was resting after appearing to be finished killing the parents. Paul entered the room, fired 1 shot at her, left, then returned fast to reshoot her a second and third time to ensure her demise. She had gunshot wounds to her head, hip, and back. Michaela is only 6 years old. A family member recalled Paul saying that he had waited a whole 20 years to accomplish this during the attack on his family. He got into his car and sped off after the massacre. After surviving family members knocked on their doors and begged for assistance, a neighbor dialed 911. A manhunt started right away. In an interview with ABC News, Police Sergeant Scott Pasquarella said, "We know the suspect had an ongoing grudge against family members and at some point in the evening left the residence for a little period of time, then returned and started firing without warning." According to Sergeant Pasquarella, he was unaware of any specific targets that the suspect may have had in mind. Because of how savage the assault had been, U.S. Marshals had been requested to help the local police in their manhunt. The public was asked to assist Jupiter Police in finding Paul Merhige because they had never witnessed a quadruple homicide before. Jim Sitton, a local TV station videographer, claimed he didn't personally invite Paul and didn't know who invited him to his home, but since he was still related, he didn't think much of it when Paul's father called to say he was headed in that direction and wanted instructions. Paul, he recalled, had a rather unusual approach to family life and rarely showed up to events. Before that evening, he had only seen Paul twice and hadn't seen him in over a decade. It's thought that he carefully selected his victims, starting with his twin sisters. They enjoyed singing, just like Michaela did. The family feels he might have been envious when he saw the family complimenting Michaela's singing voice, but they don't think he had any plans to kill her. Jim stated, "He attempted to extinguish the light. He entered the nursery. He entered and killed her on purpose after observing her innocence." Paul and his siblings had a rough past, according to court filings. He requested police protection in 2000 after alleging that one of his sisters had attempted to kill him. He ultimately decided against seeking the restraining order. Then, in 2006, after her brother lunged at her and threatened to slit her throat, Carla asked for a restraining order against him. A few weeks later, she also decided to revoke her request. The twin sisters claimed in family therapy sessions that they and their brother had been close before his first serious episode of depression at the age of 19, but that things had changed since then. 4 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder were filed against him by the prosecution, and an arrest warrant was issued. A reward of $10,000 was provided for information that resulted in his capture. He wasn't apprehended until January 2, 2010, when a staff member at a Florida Keys motel recognized him from an America's Most Wanted program. He had shaved his head, grown a beard, changed the license plates on his automobile, and employed a car cover to try to conceal the fact that he was running away. Paul quickly agreed to a plea agreement that would spare him the death penalty. He accepted a 7-life term in exchange for his guilty plea to the charges of murder and attempted murder. He agreed to relinquish any rights to appeal as part of the arrangement. Prosecutors made his medical information public after he agreed to life in jail rather than face the death penalty for the massacre. These records revealed unsettling information from more than 10 years of doctor and hospital visits as Paul's family traveled across the nation for treatment for his different mental problems. According to records, he explained to a therapist in 1998 that he felt his family had a duty to care for him and that he deserved to return to living with his parents because he thought they should suffer with him. Then, in April 1999, he attempted suicide by shooting himself in the chest, missing one of his lungs in the process. In 2005, he would make another suicide attempt by ingesting all the remaining psychiatric medications in his medical cabinet. 2 lawsuits had been brought against Michael and Carol, Paul's parents, adding insult to injury. One was submitted by Patrick Knight, and the other was done so by Michaela Sidden's parents. Both sides argued that his parents should have protected their family from him during the Thanksgiving gathering despite knowing that their son was dangerous. According to Judge Minu Sasser, no Florida court has ever held parents liable for the deeds of their adult children. Each suit was thrown out. This is my take on this case. It was a very heartbreaking story, to say the least. This monster committed this crime, whether intentional or not, and this is unacceptable behavior. Why anyone would want to kill 4 family members is beyond me. This man couldn't have imagined he would be on the run forever and not face the justice system for the crimes he committed. What he put out is what he got back in return. He took 4 lives and injured others. In my opinion, if someone takes a life, they should give up their life to be fair in the justice system. Many years ago, the death penalty was swift and severe. Now killers just sit on death row, some for over 2 decades, eating and living as if nothing has happened. I tell these stories because the dead cannot speak for themselves. And their stories need to be told, and that is what the prosecution and district attorney are for as well. As always, stay tuned for more storytelling based on true crimes all around the world. Thanks. Please like, share, and subscribe to Crimes in Candyland.